Alright. I forgot to get the GoPro and record footage, but I spent today a couple hours making little blocks to space my purlins. And then we got the purlins for part of it up. We got basically half the purlins is what I ended up having. So I've got this middle section completely up. And I've got 3 out of 6 for this end purlin. So these little blocks make it pretty easy to figure out spacing. So I can take a board purlin and get one side up in place and then carry it up the ladder and slide it over to put it in place on the other end, and then it holds them there while I work on screwing the purlins in using these were using some 6-inch construction RSS screws. So that's where I got. I need to get some more milled to get the other 9 purlins, and then I've got to get some I need to take, and I'm going to cut like a 2x8. It'll come across here as a fascia, and I'll make it flush with the bottom here so it'll actually stick up. It'll be 2x9.5 is what the actual, so a 2x10 technically, but it'll stick up so that it can basically act as a bottom purlin. Then I'll put the drip edge on. There we go. I'll put the drip edge on that so the roofing can come down. But that's where we got to today. Basically out of daylight, so it's not worth trying to rush to get anything else done. I'll do some milling tomorrow, which is going to be wonderful because tomorrow is supposed to be more wet than today was. Although this afternoon while I was starting on this, it wasn't supposed to actually be wet, so you know, it's Washington, is what it is. It's Pacific Northwest. But that's where I'm at so far. So close. I'm halfway done with the purlins, and then the next step is the sheet metal. So that's over here, just waiting to be cut. That's these guys right there. I have 20-foot pieces, so I need to cut basically 8 feet off, and then that'll hang down a little bit. May not actually need a drip edge. We'll find out, because if it hangs off by 4 inches, then drip edge isn't necessarily a requirement. But we shall see, though.
All right. So here we are, moving forward with the tractor to try and pick up some logs. The structural logs that we're going to be using are all being milled from the Douglas fir. You can see off to the right there's a few of the noble firs left over there in the pile, but most of them have been milled that were capable of being milled. So since I'm looking for 3x6s, I set aside a couple of these and tried to go for 2 of them that were going to give me that better size. I also didn't want them to be too long because I didn't want to waste potential material from other logs, but I knew I needed some of these to actually, I take that back, all of these have to be 11 feet because I'm building this with a 3-foot overhang, and it's 8 feet between the posts. So bringing that back here, get it set up, and after I got this started, I was looking at the mill and realized that I was definitely going to have to set the feet again, get everything leveled and squared. So I killed the tractor, and this is actually a prime example of why you, for instance, never work under an extended boom or front loader or whatever, because if you watch the logs, you can see it slowly lowering as the hydraulics equalize inside the machine. But the current method that I'm using is a pair of strings on either side of the rails. I've got this set of blocks. I think I mentioned this in a previous video, but I clamp the blocks to the end rails and then run the strings in between the two, and then simply measure the height from bunk to spring on both sides and adjusted it with another block. I move back and forth and have that marked to where the string line should be. It actually goes pretty quick. I do have a laser level, but since I don't usually have it set up, it's kind of sixes, I guess, whether that would actually be faster than the string method or not. What you see me doing here is cleaning the sawdust, the soaked sawdust off of the mill. In a few places I had to do that before I could actually access the bolts. Anyway, the doing it this way means that I don't have to worry about where things are in the middle, and technically I don't even have to worry about the ends as long as they are parallel with each other. As long as the two end bunks are in plane, then everything else will fall in perfectly flat and in plane. And I decided that I wanted to actually check the weight of the mill head to see if that would help guarantee, and that did actually make on a couple of them, it did make a little bit of a difference. You can see the Charlie puppy ever wanting to be played with. I'm sure from his view he's very annoyed with me because I'm playing with a pair of very shiny sticks that he wants me to throw. There will come a time, eventually, the mill will be in a permanent spot, and it'll actually have a concrete pad under it, so this will be a much less frequent requirement. Additionally, the way that I'm going to build that pad will allow me to drag the logs up onto the pad from the side, so along the mill. It'll be level with the mill, so then I can simply roll the log from the ground over onto the mill. and then the far side of the mill will actually have a drop down area so that I can climb down there and unload from like chest or waist height onto a trailer that I can park there. When we get around to getting some more groundwork done, some more dirt work cleared, then I'll go into more detail about that. But if it works the way that I want, or that I have in my head, it'll actually be a really nice setup to make both loading and unloading easy. So now that that's leveled, I can grab the log and load it on. These are about, I want to say these ended up being 16 feet. I think the thicker one was 15 feet long, and that longer one, thinner one, is actually 16 and a half, which worked out really well because I was able to have some scrap pieces to build other things. So what you're seeing here is the end result of the mistake of forgetting to tighten the tension before you try and fire the belt, the band. So I just had to take a minute and reset that, which isn't a horrible deal. And I did forget to point out that as I was climbing around the backside, I grabbed a piece of scrap wood to fit under the smaller end. I don't have a toe board set up yet. That's on the wish list still, but these are a suggestion from several milling friends who were spot on, that using some 2-inch PVC to slip over the log dogs made it so much easier to turn. The log just kind of slides along the PVC and makes a huge difference in being able to roll the log. So kudos and many thanks to all of those people who have suggested that. Back to the toe kick, I think the end goal is I'm going to take a piece of C-channel from one of the trailer frames that I ended up working on and use that, cut a piece that'll fit in between the bunks, and then just get a simple scissor jack, because it'll never have to lift very much weight to be able to do that. And then I can make adjustments, because currently the system of using something to roll the log up onto, if it's a smaller log, it works great. But when you get into some of these logs that start getting some weight to them, it makes a pretty big difference. So, for instance, using the wood web calculator to figure out the weight of this log is estimated somewhere right around 1,300 pounds. So figure if you're lifting half of that, you're going to be lifting somewhere around 650-ish, which is pretty easy for a scissor lift. So what I'm doing now is, knowing that the log was going to be, knowing that the requirement was for 11 feet long purlins, I measured, I think, 11.5 feet, and then cut the rest of the log off so that I could use that to make straight 2x6s and 2x4s. And that's kind of what I hinted or mentioned earlier in the video, was that I was able to make different pieces. That actually worked out quite well. In fact, the 2x pieces that I'm cutting at the moment are what I've been using. Last night, for instance, I got some of the bump out walls framed and in place, and that's what I used to be able to do that, because I only needed a 4-foot wall, and these pieces are 60-ish, 60 to 67 inches long. So that actually worked out really, really well. And I just ended up cutting 2-inch slabs and then rotating them on their side, and now I'm going to go down and cut that into 4-inch pieces. And as always, I'm doing oversized boards. So when I say I'm cutting a 2-inch, I'm using the scale that includes the blade kerf. So I'm actually cutting, for every 1 inch, I'm actually cutting 1 1/8. Therefore, a 2-inch board here is 2 1/4. I don't feel like I need to stress over the number of boards that I get, and if I were cutting through to a true dimension of 2 inches by 4 inches, I could do that, and it wouldn't take much longer to just measure and figure out where the actual blade is, so that the kerf is accounted for there. But I wouldn't really get any more pieces. I might get a few less sticker pieces if I were to cut that way, but since I need stickers at the moment, I'm not wasting any of that wood. And since I will be using firewood for fires, and for both campfires, for cooking, and for heating the home, all of this lumber will actually get stacked and set aside and used one way or the other. So I'm not wasting anything that way either. The added strength that you get from having the little bit of extra is enough that I figure it's worth doing. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know exactly what that measurement really is, but it is what it is. And I definitely would never cut, personally, that's just my preference, that I would never cut a 2x4 as what's matching the dimensional lumber. So I would never cut a 2x4 that's actually like 1 3/4 by 3.5, or 1.5 by 3.5, because I just don't think that's is just not accounting for potential twisting, warping. Worst case scenario, if I have to, I can come through if I weren't using this stuff green right now, I could stack it, sticker it, set it aside, let it dry, and then if something had a real warp to it, I could come back and hit it, run the bandsaw over it again, and bring it down a little bit to kind of true that up. Eventually I want to build a planer setup for the track, so I can do some flattening and thicknessing with this for slab type projects. We'll see if that ends up actually being something I'm able to do. But the battery's about to die here. I'm getting get this first log loaded, and then I'm going to just roll this second log onto it. The process is basically the same. I started squaring that cant and moved that on, the first couple rolls so that it was flat, and then cut the log so that I could get some smaller, shorter boards out of the end of it as well. The first one I got a bunch of 2x4s, the second one I got a bunch of 2x6s, just for reference. And so what we're looking at now is the finished product after I got all of those purlins cut and put in place. So we're ready to put the roofing on at this point. And I believe that'll actually be the next video. So stay safe out there. Hope everybody's staying healthy, and thank you for your time, and God bless you and yours.